Hey, welcome to another great episode of the Real Deal Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Courtney Harding. Glad to be back with a new episode, and I'm very excited. I say this all the time, but there's certain guests where I've always wanted to have on the show, and I do get very excited about it. But I'm going to bring her in a few. But for that, hit my music. Let's get it. All right. Once again, happy Friday Eve. This is Courtney Harding of the Real Deal Podcast. New episode. Glad to be back with another episode. And you can find the show on all the podcast platforms, whether it's Spotify, Apple. We're on YouTube. We're also on Spreaker, BS3 Network, BS3TVLive.com. BS3 Roku channel as well. Wherever you consume your podcast, we are there. And also, you can find me on all of the social media platforms, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. Like I said at the top of the show, I'm very excited to have my next guest. Been a big fan of this talented woman who's been doing a lot of great things. She was on NFL Network, DirecTV, SiriusXM. Now she's a show host for Sumer Sports. So welcome to the show, Lindsay Rhodes.
Ooh, dun, 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 dun. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Courtney.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for doing this. Really appreciate the time. I know it's a busy time for you as well. And but I'm so glad that we found a little bit of time to kind of just get to know you a little bit and just kind of talk a little NFL football and what you're up to and everything. So thank you again. Really appreciate it.
I'm happy to talk about all of these things. We were, as you and I were talking about before we got started, it takes a little minute to find the workflow once you're in the season. And so still in the process of trying to figure out, my camera is wanting to do a whole bunch of different things here. Trying to figure out how to make this season work for me as I work for it. But
yeah, there you go. Right. And then, like you said, you've done this for a while and everything too, and a couple of different platforms. So I'm sure you will definitely find that balance. But it is taking a little bit of time. But it's like I said, it's just week 3 of the NFL. Let's get started. I always ask my first time guest, who is Lindsay Rhodes and how did you get into, the broadcast and sports in general, your love of sports?
Yeah. So I spent a long time working in sports broadcasting in a very traditional sense. And as you mentioned, for NFL Network and, more traditional broadcast outlets for a long time. And then in the last few years have kind of sort of like become more interested or involved in like some niche aspects of sports broadcasting, specifically, obviously the broad niche that is NFL. But then also off of that, fantasy, and then some of the like advanced data and really having the opportunity to dive into like why things work the way that they work and how things actually really work, and kind of, going past some of the broad themes that I think were the ones that I focused on most, or, the broadcast networks that I worked for focused on most for most of my career. And so more recently, I'm somebody that really, really likes digging into like weedy concepts and trying to find information that is not easily found. And so I'm having a lot of fun kind of meeting new people, having conversations with new people, and working more of like a silo of the NFL sports media space.
Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting. As you said, you kind of getting into like, numbers, advanced metrics and those things too, which I enjoy. And I've really enjoyed you on, like I told you before, I've enjoyed you on NFL Network. And Love all the work you did there as well. And now with the way, NFL Network now is going to be heading into the Disney, ESPN, and everything too. What changes have you seen with NFL Network from where you started and where it is today?
Well, I mean, it's changed a lot. I think more recently it's changed in a way that it feels like for the last few years, for those of us that are paying close attention on the business side, I think that the changes have reflected that of a company that was trying to be sold. And as such, you want to look like you're showing a profit. And so I think we've seen a lot of people that were on air there in years past, kind of as their contracts come up, not be renewed. And I now it all makes sense. I think that they've been really telegraphing the fact that the move that they just made with ESPN was a move that was going to happen.
Yeah.
And so it looks like it'll be interesting to see what it looks like moving forward, frankly, because now that you sort of merge with ESPN, what parts of NFL Network actually remain, what parts are not swallowed up or in some sort of consolidation of talent and voices and look and feel and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it feels like it's changed pretty dramatically in terms of what it was trying to accomplish, and I think what it's trying to accomplish now.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, it looks like it was headed that way anyway. And you've seen it firsthand. But the thing I look at it from the outside looking in is, you said, will ESPN make any changes to the network? Will it still stay traditional to what the element of NFL Network was and is? I hope it does. I hope it stays the same. I really do. But now with Disney and ESPN, you just don't know. I hope that's a good move for them. Do you feel like that traditional, as you said, traditional broadcasting, is that missing from, maybe from this transition that's going to be happening? I think next year, I believe it's going to happen next year. So do you feel like that traditional broadcasting is missing?
Well, I think what's happened, just broadening out from NFL Network specifically for a minute, I think what's happened in the last 5 years in a very dramatic way is that I think we've witnessed media change, across the board. And,
right.
Sitting on this show talking to you is a perfect example of, like, now that everyone has an outlet to do their own programming and their own shows, I think, and this is honestly part of the reason that I become very interested in the silo that I was talking about earlier, is that now that everybody has an opportunity, there's no gatekeeper standing there saying, you can't be this if you want to be this. Like, everyone has a path with which they can at least try to be the sports broadcaster or create the content that they're interested in creating, without one person or 5 people, depending on the number of networks or wherever you're looking, saying, you're not what we're looking for, or I don't think that you have it, or I do think that you have it. Now there's this democratization of content and media. And I think we've seen in a lot of ways the downside of that, right? Like, there's no verification. You don't know who's actually doing the hard work to check to make sure that the things that they're saying are accurate versus not accurate. That's a separate story. That's the downside. On the pros, though, you have people who have been able to go out and create content that they think is interesting to them, that if you work for a big company, they would never do this content. There are so many examples of this. Working at an NFL Network or an ESPN or a Fox or whatever, the goal there is numbers, monetization. They want to be able to sell the numbers.
Right.
And so it's always, what can we put on the air that will reach the most people, that will keep our rating the highest at all times? And so, working at NFL Network back in the day, there were times when we wanted to talk about teams that were in smaller markets with less popular, like smaller fan bases, and we're discouraged sometimes from doing that. And then there are other teams that clearly have huge fan bases that are talked about quite frequently. And I think we can all name which teams those are. And so there becomes this cycle of broad conversation at all times that I think if you are a hardcore fan, or you really are interested in finding out what's going on, sometimes those conversations just don't serve you. Like they just can't go past the thing that is the broadest way in to talk about that game. The quarterbacks are always going to drive those conversations because everyone can have an opinion about a quarterback. But if you're going to talk about a guard who has an ability to pull really well or like whatever, like that's never going to happen. And so with this democratization of things, with the YouTube explosion and social media, people have carved out really specific niche lanes for themselves where they dive into this stuff, and we're finding so much information that we just haven't had access to in the past because, again, gatekeepers, a small group of companies are saying that's not interesting to our audience. And so now, I think that in some ways the content, we're in a really good period of time for like, I'm just going to talk about NFL content for a second. The types of things that you can find out now, you would never have had access to this information before because people can create a whole job for themselves where they can monetize a YouTube site. And, it's not making like millions and millions of dollars, but it makes enough to pay their bills. And so there you go. That's like the bar is lowered in terms of how many people you have to reach with each message. And so I think in a lot of ways, the messages have become smarter in this particular space.
Yeah, yes, I agree 100%. And things have, like you said, things have changed over the years. Just in the last 5 years, where you said more YouTube channels and more social media, the content creators and things like that has changed tremendously from traditional media, things like that too. And I totally agree on that. We got a couple of comments here. Just wanted to hit up here. Nathan Ramasandra said he said hi, Lindsay. He said you were on his show back in 2020. So he was just saying that you are the best. I agree 100%. So he said it was called the NR Hour, but now so thank you for the comments. Thank you for tuning in as well. So now you went from NFL Network now to Sumer Sports. Now talk a little bit about joining Sumer Sports, what it is, and because it's a company known for its for analytical approach, which I know, like you said, you love. You just said you love that lane in itself. And what's some of the biggest challenges of moving from something like NFL Network to a platform like Sumer Sports?
So Sumer Sports, for people who are unfamiliar with it, is I have a hard time describing it in an elevator pitch type of setting like this because I think that this is a good problem to have because the company is, as we speak, sort of expanding within itself at a massive rate. So it's the way that I think the way that I would have described it like 6 months ago is that we are a football data and scouting company. And we provide platforms for teams and various entities that need information about the product. We have tracking data. We have all sorts of different ways that we can pull ways to analyze and evaluate different facets of the game, right? And so that has value to college teams and NFL teams, and then hopefully a cross section of the audience as well. There's also, now I would say that we're a football AI company because that's sort of taken over a lot of our product building. We have built a football AI chatbot called Sumer Brain that's going to be out soon that we're really excited about, that is sort of everything that you know about like ChatGPT. And I've talked to so many people in the last 6 months now. This is specifically on my radar for selfish reasons. People who are like putting their fantasy football questions into ChatGPT or putting football related questions into ChatGPT and then watching their reactions to it, because ChatGPT and other products like this are built to be just such broad language models that they don't know all of the ins and outs about football and the specificities, I guess, to the conversations that we have within the football space. So we've built a product that does know all of those things, and we're in the process of training it to know how to talk football and which stats actually matter, which ones we should prioritize and deprioritize. And so I'm really excited for that to hit the market and people to start putting the questions that I've heard them putting in about, like, you know, who they should start for their fantasy team and why. I'm excited for our model to be able to answer those in a really detailed and analytical way, as opposed to just saying, you know, this person's expected to score more points, which, you know, I think a lot of us are like, yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I want to know the things that I don't know, like that are really
right.
hard for me to find, you know, and so we can, you know, answer questions that have like 5 filters on them, you know, tight end, in the red zone, on third down, whatever, like within 30 seconds, you can find your answer about their productivity in those situations. And so we're really excited about that.
Yeah, that's like in a more of expansive way to look at, like you said, not just start and sit. Like you said, yes, we know to start Jamar Chase, but why? You know, like those are the typical questions that people would. I mean, they would ask that, and should I start Jamar? Like, yeah, you start your stud, start your number one. You know, you got him for a reason at the 101 or the 102 or pick. But now, as you said, you want to know a deeper dive into, well, what's Jamar Chase's percentages on, the third down probability and things like that. I think that's interesting. Yeah.
And there are people this always happens in fantasy. And so one of my goals, and I'm not sure if we'll be able to nail it right out of the gate, but one of the goals of mine anyway, in terms of helping to advise the creation of like how they built this out, was I want us to try and figure out the reasons ahead of time why someone who typically is good is not good in a week, or someone who typically is not a producer, why all of a sudden they have a massive spike week 1 week, right? Like, it's matchup related in most cases, or in some cases. And so if there is a way to predict those types of outlier type of weeks, we all know about, I mean, it happened in week 1 and we wouldn't have predicted that in week 1, but when you have AJ Brown putting up a single digit outing and he's hardly looked at in the game, right? Is there a way to predict that type of performance in a way that is better than what we have access to right now? And so we're trying to build a model that can factor in some of the matchup related issues and tendencies and things like that will help us predict future behavior in the ways that that's possible to do.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to that. I love that. Okay. Yes, I am. Yeah. That's got me like really thinking. Yeah. It's just a different. It's a different perspective to see, fantasy football, because like you said, there's so many tools, so many, analytics and things like that, which I enjoy, but just seeing it in a different mode of like, okay, the tendencies of someone like an AJ Brown. Like I said, we never predicted he would not, and I'm an Eagles fan, but he would never predict that he would only get one, one catch and one target.
One target.
Yeah, one target. Yeah, and then it was almost towards the end of the fourth quarter. So you're thinking, okay, they're not looking for him. Is he a decoy? Like, what's going on? Then they look for him earlier last week, but still not a really big productive week. I think he's gonna have a real big week this week. They're gonna really try to push it down the field this week. They might not have no choice this week. But again, what's the tendencies look like? Are they gonna run the football? They're gonna let Jalen just air it out. It's gonna be so that type of tool would help others, play fantasy football a little bit better.
Because a lot of times, honestly, and I am guessing that you are like this. I think most of us are like this. You think about it, we're talking about this just specifically from a fantasy perspective,
right?
But if you're playing fantasy, you're thinking about it from an offensive perspective. And now there's so much data out there, right?
Yes,
and so it's like, which data point, and there are different data points on different sites. And so you very rarely have access to like all of the predictive data points in front of you. You have to kind of go looking. And so what am I looking for? And that could be an entire full-time job, just trying to figure out the different offensive points. And then I think what really ends up being the difference in some of these stories is, what is the defense doing? Because you ideally want your quarterback, you want your offense to take what the defense gives you, right? Yeah. So if the defense is just going to give you something and you can have success with that, then and I'm not saying this with regards to the AJ Brown week 1 situation, but in some cases it's smart to not force it. Like, do the thing that they're going to give you. And if they continue to give it to you, and if you continue to have success, so how do we predict what that's going to be? Right. Like, there are ways to predict that. We typically don't think about it from the defensive point of view. We think about it from the offensive point of view. And so, and I'll be honest, it's hard for me to do both. It's hard for me to take in all of the offensive information and then also flip around and take in all of the defensive point of view. We're a very offensive minded society when it comes to football.
Yeah, it's very offensive minded. And I wish that you was on like when everyone's talking about, got to go specifically for the Eagles, talking about that, like Jalen Hurts, he's just, whatever the defense is doing, he's not forcing it. And I think that's a good way to say it, because that's what it was. Everybody wants these offensive explosions. You say offensive minded, but the Eagles are thinking, we're not going to turn the ball over. We're going to give what the defense is giving us. We're going to just, if they're going to give us the underneath stuff, then we're going to do it. Yes, they're going to have to take chances, but for sure, yeah. And from a fantasy standpoint, you want as many points as you can get just to win each week. But again, from a different way, they're just doing what the defense is giving them, and they're winning. So that's the main thing from the real life football. But for fantasy, we want all the points we can get.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we want all the points we can get. We could do a whole segment on just that, just talking about the analytics of it. But for time, we'll keep moving as well. But you've covered a lot of different sports, from college football to the Olympics as well. And what's your process of getting, up to speed with different sports besides NFL, the Olympics? I mean, it just shows how much of the versatility that you have as well.
I guess it's a good thing for my career that I sort of like studying.
Yeah.
To a degree, like that's a component of this job that people don't really talk about, right? Like you turn on the TV and you see someone standing there talking about something, and you can debate, yell at the TV and talk about what, but what you don't see is how much work usually goes into preparing for that moment. And so when you're going from sport to sport, it's a totally different process now that I've just lived in the NFL lane for so long, because you only have to pay attention to what's new that day, right? Like, I already know all of the backstory, and I know everything that happened last week and last year and the year before that. And so this is the framework with which I'm approaching today. And now there's new information. Justin Fields is out. Jake Browning is going to be the quarterback for the Bengals. So I'm just inputting the new data and calculating the effect that has. So that's a much easier study process. Before I worked at NFL Network, I worked at Fox Sports Net in Los Angeles. I don't think it's called that anymore, but Regional Sports Network, where we covered all of the different teams in Southern California that were in its viewing market. And that was pro, college, high school. And so there were days, like weeks, where my assignments would be, I would go do like Lakers pre and post one day, and then the next day I would do a Kings report at practice, hockey, and then I would go to a USC football game and host their pre and post game show, or do sideline for a different sport, and then mix in some Angels there. And so it was very much study driven, because if you're showing up at the end of the week to an Angels game, but you've been at Lakers and USC and Kings the days before, you clearly are not actually watching every second of every Angels game in preparation for going. And so I have become professional at catching up. And figuring out where to find information that will catch me up in the most efficient way. I've become, I think people who do what I do become really good because they have to, at knowing where the best information is coming from, so that they can just find it quickly, right? Like, I can't follow everyone on Twitter because I need my feed, particularly in the days when I was reporting. I need my feed to be very value added for me, so that I don't get bogged down with stuff that isn't helpful. And so I think, in that case, it's a really good I would recommend it for anyone who wants to do anything in broadcasting at some point, to work somewhere where you have to do a ton of different things, like wear different hats, be different roles. Like I said, hosting, sideline, reporter. These are all very different skill sets, and it's different ways of telling a story. And then also different sports, because that type of variety kind of teaches you a lot of the skills. It's like we talk to our kids when they're in school. You're not just learning about math or science. You might not utilize that in your future career. What you're learning right now is how to learn. You're learning the skills that you will need, So if you are going to prepare for a math test and math doesn't interest you, well, how are you going to get ready for that? Like, how are you going to prepare in a way that you're going to be ready on, I almost said game day. I'm so sports trained.
Yes.
But like for that test, how are you going to set yourself up to succeed? And then for me, that was the skill that I really needed, so that I could do that one day. I know all the information I need to know to have created what I liked to do is always say, okay, what do we not know? These are the things that we know. This is the base with which our audience is working from. What are the questions that I have that are still outstanding? And how can I, in my one day of work, help answer those questions? How can I ask the right questions that drive us and push the story forward? And so I think it's an important skill set to have, just from a life standpoint.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and it's always good to, as you said, especially in broadcasting media, if you're behind the camera or whatever it is, that you're learning different skill sets, or, like I said, a variety. And it's always good to have, as you said, a lot of information that you might not even use, but at least you studied it and you have it and you're ready to go. And just in case you need it, you do have it there as well. So you kind of went right, as you said, from the Olympics to college football to basketball, and you just kind of just flow right through. It's good. I think it's good to learn a lot of different sports, and I try to do that too. I've watched so many different sports and know like a lot of the rules and things like that. So it's always good to kind of be well versed in a lot of a variety of things.
They also inform you too, in ways like there's crossover. I mean, they talk about that with athletes who are young. That's one of the benefits of playing a bunch of different sports, is that there are specific skills that you'll learn in one sport that you will implement in the sport that you ultimately choose to play. These professional athletes tell these stories all the time, right? Patrick Mahomes with his sidearm is like from his years of playing shortstop, right? Like there are skills that are transferable. And I think that that's true in everything.
Yeah, for sure. And that leads me to another question. I just got a couple more before I let you go. I knew I could talk to you for hours. So, but this is good. This has been fun about the storytelling and everything, presenting that to audiences about the athlete, not just what they can do on the field or on the court or anything later, but off the field and off the court too. How important is storytelling to you when you're presenting about a certain athlete, certain coach, team? How important is storytelling to you?
I mean, storytelling is the entire way that you get somebody to listen to you. So whatever that story is, even if the story is, now like, hey, listen to these data points, you have to understand how to communicate that in a way that is easy to listen to and easy for someone to understand. You have to understand the ways in which you have to be able to pull somebody in and make it feel interesting. So even if it's not something that they think at first blush they're interested in, you got to give them a reason to be interested in that. And so I think from a storytelling standpoint, I don't necessarily live in a lane right now where I'm telling stories about somebody's background or things like that. That was But from my sideline days or from the days of, again, doing Fox Sports West, where you're doing like a feature for a pregame show and you're like taking somebody behind the scenes and saying, look how much work went into this moment. I think all of these different ways of telling stories are important, just to pull people in. And I think that's one of the reasons that people love sports so much, is that everything has a story attached to it. Everything does. I think it's why the NFL is so hugely popular in comparison to other sports, because the stories are easy to metabolize. Like they're easy, they're obvious on a week-to-week basis. First of all, 17 games in a regular season, as opposed to 160. What's the official number? Like a lot for right?
162, a lot. Yes,
baseball.
a lot.
So the truth is, in baseball, not every game does matter. It honestly isn't. Like, you want to win more than you lose, but if you lose a game or you go 0 for 4 on that day and somebody puts a mic in front of your face and they're like, "What happened?" You're going to be like, have you
Are you
ever seen
kidding
this
me?
sport before? Like,
Yeah. Did you
that's
see?
the way
Right.
it goes. So in football, in NFL specifically, every week actually really
matters. Yep.
legitimately does matter. And because it's a matchup with one person, and that's in a lot of cases the only time they're going to play them that year, it's a lot of head-to-head story. It's a lot of history. Like, have they faced each other before? Has there been drama behind it? Like we just saw this past week with Pete Carroll and Jim Harbaugh, and like, oh, they go way back. And every story has legitimate stories built in. That could be the story of the human interest stuff. It could be the matchup stuff that I'm talking about, and what does this defense do that this offense can take advantage of and help us to predict it. Like, it's just so easy to tell the stories within football. My take is that that's why it's so hugely popular as a sport. There are a lot of other things, but I think it's just easy. It's easy to take in because it's easy to pull us in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you're right. The human interest of it is very important. And you said sometimes the story is already being told. It's being told on the field as well. And if you're looking at, watching a game and you see how the game is progressing and things like that, you talk about Patrick Mahomes' sidearm throws. It's like, man, that would be an interesting, like, why does he do this? And he might just paint the picture for you right there on the court, on the field where he's doing that. And then you ask him that question. It's like, it was an instinct. Okay. That's a story in itself right there. Like, where did that come from? Where does,
someone who wins a lot of 50-50 balls, right? Like a big contested catch guy. Like you could, how did you get good at that? How do you get good at that? Is that from a basketball background? Is that something that you can get better at? Like, every little thing has a story attached to it that somebody could go tell, that in my mind are a bunch of different fascinating components.
It's very fascinating. Very, very fascinating. All right, I just got 2 more, and then I will let you go back to a busy schedule, because I know it's just staying busy. Plus, we got football tonight as well. Yes, exciting. Thursdays, and then got college football on the weekend, and then NFL also. But I wanted to ask you about, the fantasy football this week, or just in general as a whole. What do you think of this season so far, the first 2 weeks from a fantasy perspective? There's been so many different, as you talk about AJ Brown not being targeted enough, and other things and so many injuries now to certain quarterbacks. Joe Burrow out for most of the season now, and things like that. But what's been like a couple of things that, from your vantage point of how fantasy football this season has been?
So I'm always interested in week 1's my favorite week of the year,
I saw you said that. Yep.
because we spend so much time in the off season, trying to redo the roster in the draft, right? Like, so we have fun trying to fix the problems in that sense, and then and free agency, and then afterward trying to figure out what the new roster is going to look like and how it'll all play off of each other. And you're trying to predict, in fantasy drafts are so fun, a way for us to kind of put those predictions into practical terms. And so I think the first few weeks, week 1, you get the most information. And then I would say the next checkpoint is really week 4, because you just want the data to settle. Like, we've got the Colts over here right now looking like world beaters. And with all due respect, literally, because like I respectfully just did not expect them to be as good as they are right now. But also, I'm not ready to say that they're good.
Right.
And I mean that respectfully, but it's just such a small sample size, and the Dolphins have been kind of a mess. And so you want to let things settle and not overreact to things in the first couple of weeks. And that's true in fantasy also. You've got people who are having huge spike weeks. Is that going to continue? You have people who are not as involved in the offenses from a production standpoint. Like, you've got Brian Thomas Jr. over here. Like, the number of trade offers that I have been sent that involve either wanting to get him or wanting to unload him. It's just he must be one of the most heavily traded people right now.
I would think so. Yeah.
But what I think is interesting are the people that are doing what you don't expect them to do. I mean, that isn't like rocket science, but for instance, like Wan'Dale Robinson, we have a metric at Sumer Sports that is tracking data derived that judges or scores every single play positively or negatively, the way that a team would score them as well, and have taught the model by feeding it just hundreds of thousands of football plays over the years, and then given it results of like, hey, here's how you score this. Now it does it on its own. And what I think is so cool about it is that it's player agnostic. It's literally just, I've seen this before. This is a good thing. This is a bad thing. And so you have names that pop that are interesting. And in the first 2 weeks of the season, we've had 7 wide receivers that have been in the top 10 in Sumer score both weeks. And most of the names are names you would expect. And then there's Wan'Dale Robinson.
Right, so Robinson right at the bottom, right? Yes.
And I just think that that's fascinating.
It is.
And his average depth of target is higher than it was last year. Like last year, there was Malik Neighbors, who has a longer average depth of target. He's your big play guy, you know, for the most part, but he also does everything well. So it's not just a like go route guy. And then you had Wan'Dale, who was so close to the line of scrimmage. I want to say his ADOT last year was like in the 5s. So he's clearly just a short yardage target. Well, this year, that's not the case. He's more of like a normal target range. I don't have the number in front of me, but it's much higher than I would have expected based on his past usage. And he's having success. And based on our tracking data, he's not just putting up numbers, and the production isn't just there. Like he's playing well, and that's again what I think is so cool about the way that we score people is it's just looking at what you did to add value to the play, taking the results of the play out of it. What did you do? Did you create separation? Did you create a target where the completion probability went up because of things that you did? And he's playing well. And so that's that's just one example, but guys like that, I'm fascinated by it this time of year and going like, is that sustainable? And so it tells me where to watch, right? Like people like that. Like we're all watching the Colts because they surprised us. Like, are they going to keep it going? I don't know that we're going to get an answer this week against the Titans. And honestly, I looked at their entire schedule for the rest of the year. I don't.
Yeah, I saw you posted it. I saw you tweeted it. We might go
the whole year without getting a real strong answer on them. They might actually end up having a very good record.
Very good record, yes. In that division too, for sure, they could actually easily win that division. And I saw you had posted that on X about their schedule. I'm like, well, they got a lot of winnable games if they can continue this. And you're right. I think, I totally agree. Week 1 is the most important week because a lot of teams, we don't know what the teams are because none of them, a lot of the starters don't play in the preseason. And I always say the first 4 weeks of the season is their preseason, but it's a regular season. It counts for their record. So if you're 0-4, it's like you're just getting the kinks out because you, like I said, you haven't had any game. You just had practice mostly, but now you're in live games that are counting as regular season. The first 3-4 weeks is like your preseason, and then you get teams that roll right after that 4th week because now they have their rhythm. You know, like I said, there's a lot of data and things like that. So, but we'll see if a team like the Colts can keep that up. But in that division, it's totally possible.
Yeah, and can Russell Wilson keep it up? Like he played great.
He did, against Dallas. Yeah, he did.
He was in week 2 our highest scoring quarterback in Sumer score, which blows my mind because, I do have questions about whether or not that's sustainable. I had questions about whether or not it was sustainable as the game was going on.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know. He's been good for too long. I feel like we have a moment coming up here where it's just like the wheels have to fall off, right?
Yeah, he turned back the clock. Like, how much can this be sustainable? And then, but again, if he can play like that, but they continue to keep losing for whatever reason, it wasn't his fault. It was just the defense couldn't stop Dallas.
Yeah.
And yes, he did make a couple mistakes, but you couldn't ask for anything better for Russell Wilson, the way he played. Can that be sustainable? It's a wait and see. I don't think so, but you never know.
We'll see. I mean, clearly as players get older, this is true for quarterback. It's obviously true for wide receiver. I mean, obviously for running back, all of them, honestly, like, you now become very reliant on a coaching staff to put you in specific. I mean, this is true always, but it's specifically and especially true as you get older. And there's things you cannot do as well as you used to do because your body just won't let you do them. And so it becomes imperative that you are on a coaching staff that will put you in those situations, and that for whatever reason, defenses don't, or offenses, whatever, don't force you to do the thing that you don't do well. And so that's why I say, is it sustainable? There are things that I think he's established he's not as good at. And there are things that he still does well. So is a defense going to allow him to just tee off on the things that he does well? Or are you going to force him into those situations where you have some weaknesses? That's a concern that I have expressed for the last few years with Aaron Rodgers too. I think that, there's obvious things that evidence of decline in some ways. His average depth of target is one that I'm keeping an eye on because he can still make throws. And then this is, I think, the trap that we fall into sometimes. There are plays where someone shows they can make a throw long, but like being able to do that consistently once your body starts changing is a totally different story. And so Aaron Rodgers' average depth of target is way down this year. And last year he had the lowest average depth of target of his entire career to that point. It was in the high 6s. And then this year he's come out of the gate and just been, it's been a lot of short, he has one of the lowest average depth of targets in the league right now. And so these are just the things that, like, I know a lot of people are like nerds and average depth of target. And yes, maybe that is a very nerdy thing, but going back to the point that I made when I first started here, like, I'm at a point in my career, I don't want to just talk about it. I want to learn about it. I want to know the whys. I want to find answers that help me feel like I kind of have an idea of what's coming, right? I want to solve, it feels like a puzzle to me. It's one of the things that I really like about, it's why I like the draft. It's why I like the off season in general, because I'm just trying to like figure out like what goes where, and how can we fix these problems. And you need advanced data to do that. You can't look at things like, we lived for years on, my entire time at NFL Network, if we were like, who are the best quarterbacks of the year, we would talk about passing yardage, right? You can't look at passing yardage for reasons that I think feel so obvious now, but for whatever reason, we did not, it wasn't as obvious back then. And Aaron Rodgers, again, is a perfect example of that. If you're throwing the ball a lot, that's because you're behind.
Yes.
Right? So now you have to look at, did you get to that yardage with a low number of attempts, or is it an insanely high number of attempts that got you to that incredibly high passing yardage number? And if the latter is true, where you're throwing the ball a ton, then are you actually doing it well? Because there's a reason that you're down. There's a reason that you're trailing, and then you're forced to throw to come back into the game. And so there's just, I realize that looking through advanced data points might not be everyone's cup of tea, but hopefully, again, that's when the storytelling comes into play. And hopefully we can find ways to find the right data points and then explain them well. I do think that's an area that, like, the data science community needs to do better, or could do better, is that a lot of people that understand these things, just like whether you should go for it on fourth, or whether you should kick, or whether you should, go for two, or whatever these stories are, a lot of times the narratives attached to them are like, duh, and you're like, okay, maybe let's just explain it better, as opposed to, trying to make people feel stupid, which is really a snapshot of everything, right? Like,
everything,
that's true for everything right now.
Yes.
Let's talk nicely.
Yes, exactly. You're right, though. This is right up my alley. I love this. I love listening to those advanced data points. And as you said, it's like you talked about, like, Aaron Rodgers attempting or whoever, the quarterback, attempting so many passes. It's like a basketball player that shoots a lot, that attempts 30, 40 shots. How productive is that? Are you doing that in a proficient? Are you doing it proficiently, or are you not doing that in proficient? Are you just going out there just shooting on a bad team? You're just shooting bad shots on a bad team, and it's not resulting into wins. So it's kind of the same thing. It was like, where are
100%.
where are you making those attempts, just like passing attempts and things like that too. But Lindsay, this was incredible. I really enjoyed this for sure. I could have like listened to you for hours and hours and hours, just going back and forth, just talking about different elements and things like that. I definitely would love to have you back on the show again during either, maybe after the season, or maybe during the season, a little after season 2, and when there's more time and everything too. But I really enjoyed this, and I can't thank you enough for doing this. I really appreciate it. But let everyone know where they can actually follow you, want to, reach out to you, like, subscribe, all those things. Yes, on your social media, Sumer Sports, all those things.
Yeah, I'm Lindsay with an A, _ Rhodes on Twitter. And I think that's my social media handle in a lot of other places as well. Or Lindsay Rhodes NFL on Instagram. And you can follow Sumer Sports at SUMER. It's like summer, but with one M. Are you familiar with the Sumerians? Because everyone is always like, they call it summer sports and are getting better about that. Like, we're kind of making inroads a little bit more about getting people to understand it's Sumer. But it's a reference to the ancient Sumerian society that was more advanced.
Yeah, it's kind of like consumer, like it's for the consumer in a way too. If you
there you go,
really want to play on words too with it.
There you go. I'll use that when people say summer. I'll say Sumer, like consumer.
Like consumer, you're consuming the sports.
Maybe that'll land better than the old like Mesopotamian reference.
maybe. So yes, you could use that if you want for sure. But Lindsay, thank you again. Best of luck with your teams and everything, and all the success what you got going on as well. And like I said, I would love to have you back on, but I really do appreciate this.
Thank you, Courtney. I really enjoyed this. I'm happy to come back whenever you want. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
All right. Thank you. And you enjoy the rest of the weekend, and hopefully we'll talk soon. All right. Have a good one.
You too.